Murder and Such contains true stories about murders, the macabre, true crime, serial killers, and other dark subject matter. This includes adult themes, explicit language, descriptions of gore, violence, and other information provided by news articles, witness testimony, and public record. Murder and Such is not intended for all audiences, and although warnings will be set in place, listener discretion is still advised.
And I'm back. Hey guys, it's Hunter. So first and foremost, I apologize that it took an additional week to get this episode out to you. I took the extra week off so I could do some self-reflection, and considering I don't like really lying to you guys, I picked up a new video game and played the hell out of it. But that's all done, and I'm back with another episode for you. But when it comes to the John Crawford episode, I want to thank each and every one of you who went on Apple Podcasts and left me a 5-star review, whether it was written or not. I did get some 1-star reviews, which was to be expected, but that's just the divisiveness that we deal with on a constant basis when you're talking about a somewhat polarizing subject. I felt like it was the time to discuss John's murder, and I thank you for listening and even sending me messages of encouragement. That's one of the best feelings that I can get from doing this show. And trust me, this episode is going to be pretty polarizing as well. But I do welcome you back to Murder and Such, and I thank you for being with me today. For Patreon shoutouts, I want to re-thank the 2 people that I mentioned towards the end of the last episode. So I want to thank Jasmine McLean for jumping on the Patreon page, and another thank you to Lucy Kavanaugh for her donation to the show. A special thank you to Wanda Faust for also jumping on the Patreon page, and I'd also like to thank Michelle Pierce for helping fund the back end with her Patreon donation. I'd also like to thank Justine Pittman for making a donation to the show, and a very special thank you to the incredible Deb During-Brown for her donation to the show. A big thank you to Callie Harris for being generous and donating to the show. And I'd like to thank Paula Ford for also donating to the show. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank Jenna Kagawa for also donating to the Patreon. All of you help fund this stupid little show, but I am still and always forever thankful for your generosity and kindness. And if you would like to help donate to the show, you can find the Patreon page at patreon.com/murderandsuch. And the only tier that I have is just $1 an episode, and you get the episode ad-free. You get it on a special RSS feed that you can put in your podcast player. So I thank you all for being so incredibly kind. I love each and every one of you. So thank you. And if you'd like to help the show but can't afford to, even dropping a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or sharing the episodes with your friends helps out more than you would ever believe. But before I kick off this episode, I do have an update to a case that I covered a while back. Now, if you listen to the Dustin Honkin case, which was episodes 51 and 52, you'll remember that Dustin Lee Honkin was supposed to be executed earlier this year, but with the pandemic, it was postponed. In episode 52, I interviewed the key witness, Christy Galbots, about her involvement with the case, including where she found that Dustin and Angela were trying to have Christy murdered while both of them were still behind bars. Thankfully, the FBI and DCI have made sure that Christy is still living, and as well as her children and grandchildren. But Christy had actually reached out and informed me that Dustin Lee Honkin's execution date has been reestablished, and they announced on June 15th of this year that they will be executing Dustin on July 17th of 2020. So by the time that you're listening to this, the world, thankfully, will have less than a month of this murderer fucking asshole behind bars and living on the taxpayer dime. So, there's your update. But I do hope that it brings some of the family and the people around the case closure. And again, I want to thank Christy for coming forward and telling her story to not just me, but to all of you who tuned into that episode. So again, Christy, thank you very much for telling your side of the story. It definitely added an extra dynamic to that very episode. But without further ado, let's get into this episode. Now, it's no secret that I've spouted my political opinions on this show. I've gotten some one-star reviews talking about how I'm too political or too anti-presidential, which I will admit, I've given my opinion whether you agree with it or not, but over the course of the last few years, I've tried my best to keep those opinions to myself, or will include the information where it's necessary. So I apologize if my political beliefs have offended you, but I'll try to do my best from here on out. But there are many things that we can see as divisive tactics and stances. Some people are pro-gun or pro-Second Amendment, and some people just don't like guns and think that we shouldn't have them. I've said my stance before, but when it comes to the issue of abortion, some people are pro-life and some are pro-choice. I've also stated my opinion about that. There's tons of opinions that you can have, and whether you're a hardline Republican or a hardline Democrat, or some weird combination or mishmash of all political stances like myself, who believes that a gay married couple can protect their marijuana farm with semi-automatic rifles, you don't have to cater a specific line, and you can hold many different beliefs. Now, I used to see people who opposed my beliefs as the enemy, but now I take more of a listening approach, and I try to learn something from each person, whether they agree or disagree with my stances. We're always capable of change, and we can always change our opinions based on new information. That is what growth is all about, and it should be encouraged. There is no knowledge that is not power, or whatever the fuck Mortal Kombat said. But I am going to bring up a very divisive topic in this episode, because it's at the crux of what this person gained notoriety for. The subject of immigration. I'm going to bring you both sides of the argument to the best of my abilities where I can, but there's one thing that I think we should all take a hard stance against. But here's my question for you. What do you think will happen when you take a known neo-Nazi and white supremacist and give him and his buddies some semi-automatic rifles and let them form their own little shitty rogue militia to protect the border between Arizona and Mexico? We'll get to that. But as always, my name is Hunter, and you're listening to Murder and Such, and this is episode 65, Jason Todd Ready. A bit of a forewarning for this episode is that I will have audio clips from various sources, and it does include hate speech that is spoken by Jason. This will be very sensitive to many listeners. I have warned you. Here we go. So, I don't know about you, but I fucking hate Nazis. Come to think about it, we had a whole world war about that, and they lost. Sure, it may be unsportsmanlike to shit on the losers of a team, but when it comes to the Nazis, I'm pretty sure that we can shit on their stupid beliefs any day of the week. Like, okay, hear me out. Like, if you take the song Friday I'm in Love by The Cure, and you know what, fuck it, let's just do this.
I don't care if Monday's blue, Tuesday's grey and Wednesday too. Thursday, I don't care about you, it's Friday.
Fuck the Nazis. Like I said, any day of the week, Nazis can go fuck themselves. But anyways, white supremacists, or going deep into the core of their beliefs, hate. We all know what hate is. I dislike avocados and sweet potatoes. You could say I almost hate those things, but that's a choice of mine over a preferred taste. With those things specifically, it's a texture kind of thing with me. Sandworms, you hate them, right? I hate them myself. But Nazis, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and all of those specific people hate one thing in particular, and usually that's just someone who isn't white. Jason Todd Ready, or as I will be referring to him as JT Ready, was one of those people. Now, JT Ready was born on February 17th of 1973 in Florida, and he had attended the Mulberry High School in Mulberry, Florida. Not much is known about his early childhood, but there was some cases of domestic violence at home at the behest of an abusive father. For most of his childhood, he was seen as somewhat of a hot-headed kind of kid. He often would pick fights with kids in school, and considering he was a pretty stocky child, his go-to would be to shove kids that he had an issue with up against lockers or ominously wait for them or stalk them outside of school. Now, counselors had tried to intervene about his anger issues and recommended to his father that he should seek some sort of intervention to help him with that, but that didn't sit well with his father, and he borderline beat into JT that his anger was a sign of weakness. Of course, this only manifested as more aggression within JT. Now, there was one time when he was a young adult that he was arrested after an altercation with another teenager in which he took a baseball bat while the other person was driving away and swung it at the car, which ultimately smashed the windshield and took off the side mirror. He was subsequently charged and arrested with aggravated assault and criminal mischief, but he was only given a year of probation and community service as a first-time offender. But after school, he had decided to try his hand at some voluntary discipline, and he had enlisted himself in the United States Marine Corps in 1996. Now, the armed forces is a good outlet for people who want to not only serve their country, but also learn some core character building exercises, and of course, discipline. I wish I could say that his tenure with the USMC was going to be a good one, but let's just say that he didn't have the best record. Now, one thing that JT would later go on to constantly recant was the fact that he used to be a Marine, which in and of itself is true, but let's just call that a half-truth. But it's not your typical case of he enlists in basic training, then goes off to AIT or Advanced Individual Training, serves a couple tours, and comes home with honors. No. Good old JT was a very naughty boy when he was enlisted. So during his time, he ended up reaching the rank of Lance Corporal, which, good on him. But it was in 1996 when he had his first run-in with his superiors. Now, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, JT went AWOL, or absent without leave, for 8 days, which is a big fucking no-no. The charges that he faced and was convicted of included unauthorized absence, failing to follow an order or regulation, and larceny and wrongful appropriation. His punishment included him being demoted back to a private and was subsequently jailed for 3 months. Now, when he was enlisted, he ultimately ended up as a scout for a light armored vehicle known as an LAV-25, and he was given an M249 light machine gun as his primary weapon. But during a field exercise at 29 Palms Base, Captain Dipshit forgot to bring with his primary weapon, and his platoon sergeant had disciplined him yet again. Now, this only added anger to what was slowly building more and more over time. But with him being a scout, his primary objective was to keep an eye on the surrounding areas in case there were enemies nearby that wanted to attack those vehicles. This is where he fine-tuned his skill set of tracking people. Also, considering he was a very large man, and he had a bad knee from a football game that he was in, he was sent to Camp Pendleton in San Diego County, California. He would frequent very military surplus stores, specifically one in Oceanside, California. He would buy gear that he thought that he would eventually need, like canteens, holsters, and rappel ropes. But when he was there, he found himself a special group of friends. And let's just go along with the ones that, they were the kind that enjoyed dressing up as ghosts with pointed hats and burning lowercase t's at, weird bonfires in the woods. Yeah, those guys. But when he was at Camp Pendleton, he started searching the areas for illegal immigrants as a pastime hobby, looking at anyone who may be crossing the border unauthorized or illegally. JT very much had a vendetta against anybody who wasn't white or a legal citizen of the United States, which this is going to get a little bit confusing as the story goes on. Now, I am going to read off some written quotes from him, considering this is an audio podcast, but I just hope to Christ that nobody takes these out of context, and if I ever decide to run for office, they will blast these all over the internet. So, there are some very rough quotes that I'm going to say. But in his own words, JT had said, quote, "This is a white European homeland. That's how it should be preserved if we want to keep it clean, safe, and pure," end quote. The people that he became friends with were part of the National Socialist Movement, otherwise known as neo-Nazis, white nationalists, and white supremacists. But it wouldn't be much longer until JT's tenure as a Marine would turn very sour. Just a few months after he was first court-martialed for going AWOL, he found himself in the crosshairs of his superiors once again. This time, with his fancy new mindset that he had against immigrants, he was indicted on charges of conspiracy, assault, theft, and wrongful solicitation and advice. His extracurricular activities of trying to hunt down immigrants had taken a turn for the worst when he found a family of 3 and decided it was in the country's best interest if he tracked them down and proceeded to beat the hell out of a male immigrant with his rifle. Ultimately, he was found guilty and was sent to spend 6 months in a detention center, and then when he was released, he was dishonorably discharged from the United States Marine Corps on account of bad conduct. So, when he would later go on to speak about how he was a United States Marine, it is half true, but he was mostly a scumbag the entire time. So after he's discharged, he decides that he wants to keep monitoring the border, so he moves off to Mesa, Arizona, just outside of Phoenix. Now, the closest border area from where he was living at the time would be about 2 to 3 hours drive, but the stretch of land that borders with Mexico and Arizona is very lengthy, and the vast majority of it isn't inhabited by very many people, except maybe a couple small shanty towns. But either way, he had this vast open land that he could use for his own little stupid patriotic pastimes. Not only did he spend his time patrolling the border like some shitty form of the Al-Qaeda, but he decided to also start hosting and getting involved more with the National Socialist Movement groups, to the point where he would travel across state lines to protest with other neo-Nazis and make a pretty bad name for himself. But in the midst of his discharge, he met a married woman by the name of Arlene Lindgren, and they weren't even married a full decade until they finalized their divorce in 2003. Divorce papers showed that the vast majority of his issues stemmed from anger and irrational behaviors, sometimes leaving for weeks on end to go off on his, and I quote this, "special missions from Uncle Sam." Blah. Other interests that he had was watching various military movies, including his favorites like Full Metal Jacket, Platoon, and Red Dawn. He could quote most of the movies off the top of his head, but not only that, he could also sing the Ballad of the Green Berets without skipping a beat. it kind of makes you wonder what kind of a soldier he would have been with the Marine Corps if he wasn't such an unlikable sack of smashed assholes. But in 2003, he was baptized at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints by a politician and elder by the name of Russell Pierce. Now, Russell had put a bug in JT's ear about what could be done to help his causes, because although JT was somewhat of a vigilante, he had an understanding that most things can or cannot be carried out in the United States because we have all these little things you have to go through that are called laws. Now, he took that information and he ran with it. He had served as the president of the Mesa Community College Republican Party Club and was also a committeeman for the Maricopa County Republicans. But merely being someone who helps inform voters and help canvass the areas for upcoming elections is not really enough to change the laws and values amongst your constituents. That's when he decided in 2004 to run for a seat in the Arizona House of Representatives. Now, in recent years, we've actually seen some white supremacists, or ones that hold white nationalist views, take up seats in government. Particularly, there's one from my home state of Iowa that just got voted out of office by the name of Steve King. Now, he was outed by the voters of Iowa, but also by the Iowa GOP as well. Now, Steve pretty much held nothing back when spouting off his mouth about immigrants, Muslims, or anyone who possibly wasn't white. Some of Steve King's most notable hits include the following. When Steve was criticized for being a white nationalist, he had said, quote, "White nationalist, white supremacist, Western civilization, how did that language become offensive? Why did I sit in classes teaching me about the merits of our history and civilization?" Another one that he said was in support of a far-right anti-Islamic Dutch politician by the name of Geert Wilders. In a statement, Steve King had said that, quote, "We're watching as Western civilization is shrinking in the face of the massive epic migration that is pouring into Europe." That's the core of that tweet. They're importing a different culture, a different civilization, and that culture, the imported one, rejects the host culture. So, yeah, Steve King has not held back with his shitty takes on civilization or the population, and him classifying the deaths of Americans at the hands of immigrants as, quote, "a slow-motion Holocaust." Thank Christ that he no longer will hold office. So, from the bottom of my cold black diabetic heart, good on you, Iowa. It's about time. But before Steve King started his anti-immigration and horrendous viewpoints of the world, we had JT Ready running for the House. So let's just say that his campaign didn't go so well, because his campaign motto was literally the following. Quote,
"The purity of the Aryan race is the most precious resource nature has to offer all of humankind."
End quote. Yeah, so let's just say he didn't win this election, but it didn't stop him from trying to get a seat on the city council for Mesa, Arizona in 2006. He also didn't really get taken seriously with that one either. But in the meantime, he still went and tried to secure the border with his Gravy Seals buddies, to the point where he was deemed a gang member by the Mesa Gang Squad because he was such a prominent voice with the National Socialist Movement. Now, in an interview with ABC 15 in Phoenix, Sergeant Ryan Russell said that he knew JT Ready by his name because, quote, "he was so confrontational and because he was always armed when we dealt with him." He also stated that there was over 3,300 known gang members in Mesa, but he said that there was a very small fraction that they knew the members just by their names, JT Ready being one of them. Now, they also brought up the fact that JT Ready had multiple run-ins with the law, including in 2006 when he approached an immigrant and fired upon him while dressed in full tactical gear. Now, this is something that was brought up when he was trying to run for city council. And if it wasn't just the Aryan race shit that he was spouting, this definitely sealed his fate for being able to run for office. He was never charged in the shooting of the unknown man due to him stating that it was self-defense. Now, I want you to think about something for a second. Here's a hypothetical. Let's say that you're trying to cross the border for whatever reason you need to. Whether it's trying to escape the impoverished life that you may have back home, look for a better opportunity for your family, or whatever reason at all. You've got this man, probably right around 350 pounds, dressed to the nines in satchels, body armor, a semi-automatic rifle in hand, and you're staring down the barrel of that very gun. Would you even think to approach them or even try to fight with them? Most likely not, because I don't know about you, but I can imagine that getting shot doesn't feel so hot. So the whole defense of self-defense kind of sounds really fishy to me. But not only does that sound fishy to me, it also sounded awfully fishy to the FBI. Unbeknownst to JT, he was being investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation because they were looking into a possible domestic terrorist who had been leaving immigrant bodies riddled with bullet holes just across the United States border. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to let this man speak on his own behalf for what he truly believes. This is from a white nationalist protest that took place in Oceanside, California on October 10th of 2009. And I am warning you, this is about as racist and anti-Semitic as can be. Of course, I don't agree with him in any way, shape, or form, but I want you to pay attention to who he's targeting as his enemies in his own mind and how truly delusional this man is. Alright, here's a clip.
And that shows you what kind of savages we're dealing here with a revolution. No, they are the antagonists. They're the ones that don't belong here.
Is this what you wanted, those?
We wanted to demonstrate peacefully in America, and you can see what the result is. That you have criminals that will cross the line and push away cops. Same ones that are raping our children.
Okay, thanks.
You got it.
Obviously, that's JT Ready explaining his true beliefs. This is at the beginning of this 9-minute long video of somebody who's on the ground at this white nationalist rally and asking questions, trying to figure out what it is they're trying to accomplish. And I'm going to play some more, and again, this is a really hard listen, and this clip is going to be very long. You've been warned, but if you don't want to listen to it, I don't blame you in the slightest. You should probably skip forward about... I would bring Post-Production Hunter in here, but, I am Post-Production Hunter. Skip forward about 7 minutes and 6 seconds if you don't want to hear it. Here it is.
You would want whites to come in over Latinos, for instance.
Exactly. Like the Jews want Latinos over us. You're exactly right. Like Jews say they're the chosen over everyone else. You're exactly right. Now you hit the nail on the head. So why aren't you questioning Jews about that? Why?
Well, what would you have me ask if I were to be able to interview some Jewish folks?
Oh, really? Why would you ask them, why is it so important to displace white Americans from this soil?
How are they?
1965 immigration reform bill by two Jews that it was to get rid. It's the Hart-Celler Act. Look it up, Chief. Out of Brooklyn, New York, was to create legal immigration to displace white Americans from America, European Americans.
But weren't non-whites excluded prior to that? For instance, the Chinese.
Apparently not enough. Apparently not enough. Apparently not enough. We weren't displaced by Chinese.
Do you believe that, Latinos should not immigrate to the United States, like legal ones? Or?
Well, this is a white European homeland. That's how it should be preserved if we want to keep it clean, safe, and pure.
Is that what people refer to as white nationalism?
White nationalism means they want their own nation, not necessarily have to be here in America.
But I'm saying, like, what's the difference between like a white supremacist and a white nationalist?
Well, a white nationalist would be wanting their own nation. Perhaps supremacists would want to be supreme over others. We don't need to enslave other people.
Are you a nationalist or a
I
supremacist?
am a nationalist.
Do you think
I'm a national socialist.
national? But is it behind? I know that, like, I read the 25 points on your internet site.
Sure.
Isn't that stuff also supremacist?
Is that what the Jews are doing when they exclude the Palestinians?
I don't know. I'm just
Well,
asking
if you can tell me, you're using the words. I never said the word supremacist. So don't put words in my mouth. I
That's
said
what I'm
I'm a
asking.
national socialist.
But isn't that like Nazi Germany were national socialists?
Nazi Germany was a great country.
You mean like Adolf Hitler?
Adolf Hitler was an excellent white civil rights leader.
But didn't he murder a lot of innocent folks?
Nope.
He didn't kill 6 million Jews.
Nope.
And
That's a lie.
who's propagating that lie?
Can you show me the propaganda that shows the forensics of 6 million barbecued bodies anywhere? I've been to Auschwitz. Can you show me?
You've been to Auschwitz?
Yes, I have.
And
I speak fluent German.
Okay, so like Auschwitz, Jews weren't killed at Auschwitz.
Not barbecued by 6 million of them. Absolutely not.
Do you think any Jews were killed in the Holocaust?
Do you think that 6 million white people lost their lives in World War II?
I'm sure they did, but
Well, then why do we only hear about the Jews? That shows who controls the media. So you're telling me that 6 million Jews are more important than 6 million white people?
No, I'm just asking.
You're saying that 10 to 1 is more important.
Do you think that?
So you're saying it's okay to kill whites?
Do you think whites are genetically superior to African Americans, for instance?
I think we're genetically different. Just like a Chihuahua and a Rottweiler are different. They're both dogs. They're definitely not equal.
So do you think whites are like better than blacks or something? Or
I would love my race, of course. Why wouldn't I like my own race? Jews should, don't they think they're better? Don't they call themselves the chosen ones?
I think.
Have you never heard chosen ones?
I
Give
think
me a
you're
break.
referring to something back in like history. I don't know if they think they're, I'd have to talk to some of those folks.
Well, why don't you do that?
But I'm asking you a question. Every
Okay.
time I ask you a question, I'm just trying to get where you're coming from.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing, is you're trying to get the soundbite that I'm saying we're over. We want to be free and independent of other races. That's natural and
in the
healthy.
United States.
Of course.
Okay, so like African Americans and Latinos are not part of that vision.
Africa has an entire continent.
So you would say that.
Where's our continent?
So where should the African Americans and Latinos who are here now? Where would you have them go?
Well, we'd have to work that down, and we'll sit down with black leaders about that.
But what would you suggest if you could wave the magic wand?
Well, I think that the Northwest United States should be white.
Like Idaho and Oregon?
Of course.
Okay, and you would seed other parts of the country. So that would be all white.
Of course.
Okay. So what about California?
Well, Mexifornia is going to be up in the air. Obviously, it's a battleground, as you can see.
And I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. You think Adolf Hitler was a great leader?
White civil rights leader, absolutely.
Adolf Hitler was a white
Great,
civil rights leader.
great, yes.
But you don't think he murdered innocent
6
people?
million Jews? No. Or innocent people, that is correct.
No, it's a fact.
Do you think it was a
That's a lie.
mistake that the United States went to war
It
against
was
them?
racial suicide, absolutely. World War II vets, a lot of them understand that now. We committed racial suicide during World War II.
Is there anything that I'm missing about African Americans and Latinos that you'd like to get across that I haven't
Yeah,
asked?
we appreciate the new Black Panther Party because they have the same views that we do, except they happen to be black.
And do you have any theories about 9/11 or Obama's birth or anything like that?
You know what? I'm out here about saving my race right now.
But do you think President Obama is an enemy of white folks?
I think President Obama is a result of racism because whites were guilted into believing that they should vote for a non-white to prove that they weren't racist. Otherwise, they would have voted for Hillary Clinton.
Would you have preferred Hillary Clinton?
Well, I wouldn't have preferred either one, but I think that if you hold those philosophies, that would have been the correct candidate, but only racists voted for Obongo.
President Obama.
I call him Obongo.
Why
He's
do you
not my president.
He's not.
He represents racism in America. I don't stand
President
for that.
Obama represents.
Yes, he does.
Has he given talks on tolerance, for instance?
Tolerance of what? Not like the tolerance today where we have to give away our flagpoles, but they don't. We get hit in the face with them. Is that the kind of tolerance you're talking about? Sounds like a double standard to me. How about tolerate our views for a change then?
So do you favor violence against black people?
I never mentioned the word
Okay, no,
violence.
that's
I believe in self-defense. If you're attacked, you have the right to defend yourself.
Well, thank you.
So do you or the Jews or anyone else.
Is there anything that I didn't ask that you think should be covered that you'd want people
We'd
to
like
know?
to see a minefield on the border.
Now, the National Socialist Movement is a neo-Nazi organization, is it?
We do not use that term. We're National Socialists.
And
You've read the 25 points. You understand what National
how many members do you guys have in
We do not
California?
disclose membership for obvious security reasons.
But it's not more than like 50, huh?
I didn't say a number, so don't try to say it like more or anything.
Well, thank you. Just your first name so I can identify it.
JT Ready out of Arizona. I'm very well known.
Oh, JT Ready. Oh, now,
Yes, sir.
so you're going to have a big rally there in November,
That
right?
is correct, November 7th.
And what's the purpose of that rally?
That is to put Americans first.
And is Sheriff Arpaio somehow...
Sheriff Arpaio is supporting the law.
So you're in favor of the policies and procedures of Sheriff Arpaio in Arizona?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for speaking
Thanks.
to us.
What's your name?
My name is Brian.
Brian, do you have a card or anything?
You know, I don't on me because I just left everything because you guys started
What
listening.
news channel is it on?
Oh, this is we do research at the university.
Oh,
so
university,
we're just
okay.
university researchers.
Come on, come on out for Arizona. I think you'll see a good time.
When is that November rally?
November 7th. This is Saturday. It's 2 weeks from now.
And what's the theme
And
of
if
it?
you come in, maybe we can get you in the after-hours party with a swastika burning.
With the swastika burn? Oh, you mean when they put the whole? Okay, and what's the theme of the rally?
The theme is Americans first, not illegal aliens first.
And what's the theme of this rally today?
The theme of this rally is that we have a right to demonstrate as white Americans on the street.
First Amendment.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Just like anyone else has.
Alrighty.
You can really tell how taken aback that guy on the street who's interviewing these white supremacists really is just dumbfounded that people actually think this kind of shit. It's mind-boggling that people like this even still exist. So during this on-the-street interview, Captain Roly-Poly is wearing black clothing and a black helmet with a chin strap to hold in his many chins. One of his buddies is holding up an American flag with a swastika and iron cross emblazoned over the top of it. Yeah, everybody does have a First Amendment right to protest, but come on. It's one thing to protest on behalf of Black lives or to protest Wall Street bailouts or just the smugness of these human queefs standing out in broad daylight openly saying that they're racist, homophobic, xenophobic, etc. it's just, sorry, but it's fucking gross. Yeah, it's their right, but it doesn't make it socially acceptable. Just some food for thought. So not long after this rally in Oceanside, JT decided to found an organization called the Minutemen Civil Defense Corps and another called the U.S. Border Guard. He petitioned some of his moronic white nationalist buddies to help him with his vigilante endeavors, and their main foray was patrolling the Arizona-Mexico border in search of illegal immigrants. Hence, the FBI was looking into him. Now, this militia was even covered in a Vice documentary that really didn't air on TV because when they were going to release it, the main events at the center of the story had come forward and made some very unsavory headlines. But he wasn't shy about his methodology in which he wanted to stop illegal immigrants. He touted lethal force on more than a handful of times. If you ask my personal opinion, this guy was unhinged. Anger and violent issues for years and years and years, and when you compile that with his white supremacy attitude, I speculate that he pulled the trigger on more than one immigrant. But this fueled his ambition to still want to get a position of power. According to a profile that was published by the Southern Poverty Law Center, on June 19th of 2010, JT took a group of heavily armed citizens to the Veckle Valley in Pinal County, Arizona, a border area noted for drug smuggling and illegal immigration. He described the actions as, quote, the Minuteman Project on steroids. He and 10 others were armed with rifles, pistols, and tactical gear. Along with the 10 people included Harry Hughes and Jeff Hall. Both were notable National Socialist Movement members, with Jeff being the regional director. They had taken up place in an abandoned building in the desert and went on armed patrols of the area. Now, this didn't sit well with local law enforcement, including Pinal County Sheriff Paul Babu. Paul was quoted saying, quote,
Though I appreciate their support and offer to take up arms and patrol, This would not be helpful and would only cause a strain on already strained resources, and their safety needs to be a priority. I do not ask or encourage them to come here.
Now, a way that JT found other recruits to help with his patrols was using an online message board known as the New Saxon Forums. According to the book called Beyond Hate, White Power and Popular Culture by Professor David J. Leonard, he describes the New Saxon Forums as a social networking hate group. In an excerpt from the website itself, it says that it's, quote, "The New Saxon is a social networking site for people of European descent where users may enjoy many great features which will enable fun interactions among members. Hot topics of interest include defending the rights of white people, preservation of European culture and heritage, reform of illegal immigration policies, working rights, withdrawal of our military from an illegal Middle Eastern occupation, and promotion of white separation." End quote. Now, of course, JT was all about that gross shit. But in June of 2010, he authored a post that read, quote, "I would eventually like to fund a whole platoon, full-time, against the narco-terrorists. This will take a group effort, however. But we will take direct action against the enemy and kill them lawfully." End quote. He also asked for donations of guns, smoke grenades, and pepper spray since he only worked full-time at an auto zone in Mesa. It was later revealed that since he faced some backlash from the Pinal County Sheriff's Department and his notoriety with the National Socialist Movement, he had announced his intentions to leave the group on July 4th of 2010. But the ulterior motive of him wanting to leave the White Nationalists was because he wanted to become the sheriff of Pinal County, thus giving him more power and more than likely a license to shoot and kill in his eyes. Now, although he was a pretty far-right activist, he had supported conservative figures such as Joe Arpaio. Then he petitioned Henry Hughes, another white nationalist, as his chairman, and had decided to run as a Democratic sheriff. The reason why he chose the Democratic Party was because of the party's former support of the Jim Crow laws and pro-segregational politicians such as Robert Byrd and George Wallace. He did say that when he was running as sheriff that he wouldn't let politics control his opinion, and he would keep law and order since the role of sheriff is nonpartisan. But this really didn't fool anyone, and the sheriff's department actually had tried to distance themselves from him and put him further than arm's reach away. But he didn't really fool anyone, considering he had already made a name for himself with both the citizens and the police of Pinal County. But what about his personal life, aside from his failed political runs? It turns out that JT wasn't just patrolling and stalking possible immigrants, but it turns out that in 2009, a protection order was placed against JT by a woman in Scottsdale, in which he actually petitioned to have a protection order placed against her as some kind of a gotcha moment. But there was another woman named Regina Madrigal in 2003 who lived in the same apartment complex as JT, had actually accused him of stalking, spying, frequently calling, harassing, and trying to kiss her. She had stated that, quote, "He was always telling me about plans for killing people. He had lots of guns in the house, and he always believed that the government was conspiring." End quote. But then, I guess you can say that he found love, or something of that sort. He had met a woman by the name of Lisa Medeiros in 2011. Lisa was in her mid-40s and had went through somewhat of a traumatic divorce in 2006 with her now ex-husband. She had 2 daughters, an older daughter named Amber, who was in her early 20s and was pregnant with her daughter Lily, and a younger daughter named Brittany, who was 18 when Lisa met JT. By this time, He claimed to be out of the National Socialist Movement and continued working at his job as a clerk at an AutoZone while still trying to run for Pinal County Sheriff. Now, Lisa didn't know about his past troubles with women, and I truly wish that he could have gotten help with his anger, but as always, that's almost never the case. And it's worth noting that her daughter Amber had actually just given birth around the time that they had gotten together. I did, however, find it odd that someone with the beliefs that JT had would date a woman with a Spanish surname such as Medeiros. But either way, Lisa was lonely. She wanted somebody to love, someone to share her love with, and someone who would love her in return. Friends and associates described her as kind and giving, but also lonely and needy, and hadn't had a sweetheart since her former husband. She thought that she had finally found that person with JT Ready. She finally mustered up the courage to finally talk to JT at AutoZone. A neighbor of Lisa's had said that when she met JT, she glowed like a schoolgirl. She even introduced JT to the neighbor and had said that she was happy to do so. At her home, both of her daughters and her grandchild lived there with her. Her house was a proverbial home. You know, not just a place for her stuff and where you can sleep, but a welcoming, humble slice of America that Lisa had made her own. And we all know what it's like when you first meet someone. Your stomach fills with butterflies, you wait for a phone call or a text, and after her last divorce was so devastating on her, she was ready to be in love all over again. Can you really blame her? But what she didn't know was the lingering monster that JT hid beneath the surface. But after a while, JT was fired from the AutoZone that he worked at, and considering that he didn't have a job, he was also evicted from his apartment when he couldn't pay for it. Now, because Lisa was the kind of woman to give her loved one anything that they wanted or needed, she gave him the proposition that he was waiting for. The chance to move in while he could get back on his feet and could contribute to the household. 3 generations of the Medeiros family under one house, and an opportunity that, honestly, I don't think that someone like him should have ever deserved. But after he moved in, things weren't all sunshine and rainbows. His anger started coming out at full force. Sure, he had denounced the White Nationalists, but he didn't shy away from spouting his racist rhetoric. Amber's daughter Lily was half Hispanic, to which JT would call her 50% ugly. To a baby. His temper always kept on flaring up, and he had no ambitions to want to find work or any means of contributing to the house. He would leave for days and sometimes a week at a time to go off on his stupid little border patrols, and what he did during those ventures is anybody's fucking guess. Apparently one time when he was back at Lisa's, she had brought him a bottle of water, but apparently it was the wrong bottled water, so he retaliated by taking off the cap and pouring the entire bottle of water over her head. And he was also known to put her daughters on a timer for how long they were allowed to shower. Then, as noted in an article that was archived from azcentral.com, JT had delivered a crushing blow, which resulted in splitting Lisa's family apart. He was not the owner of the house, but he ordered Amber and Brittany to leave the house and find a place of their own. Not only would this put Lisa in greater danger, as there would be nobody there to keep tabs on what he was doing to their mother, but they were left to fend on their own just because this racist fuck said so. Neighbors had stated that the arguments were almost constant. There were a few times that the police were called as a result of a domestic dispute, but there wasn't much that they could do since one of the common traits of a domestic abuser is to control the person that they're abusing, usually leading them to deny any allegations that might get their abuser in trouble, which could also lead to the victims face a much harsher penalty at the hands of their abuser. Lisa was pretty much scared for her life, because what are you going to do when you kick out your violent, abusive, white nationalist boyfriend out of your house who has no job and no means of living on their own? It was a terrifying spot for Lisa to be in, and unfortunately, it's one that cost her her life.
I need a police officer to be come to 530 West Tumbleweed Road.
What's the address?
530 West Tumbleweed Road.
What's the street name one more time, ma'am?
Tumbleweed.
Tumbleweed?
Mm-hmm.
520 West Tumbleweed Road in Gilbert?
Yes.
May 2nd, 2012, at around 1 o'clock p.m. The voice that you're hearing is that of Lisa Medeiros.
Okay, what do you need assistance with, ma'am?
Domestic violence. He's going ballistic in the house, and he's ruined the freaking garage door, and I want...
And who is he, your husband? Are you speaking about your husband, ma'am?
That boyfriend.
What is it that he's doing? What is it he's doing, ma'am?
Oh my God! He's right.
Hello?
It was at this time that JT Ready went through the house, shooting anyone and everyone that he could find. He killed 4 people that day. The first person that he shot was Jim Hyatt, a 24-year-old fiancé to Amber, an Army veteran who served in Afghanistan, shot dead in the head. The second person that he killed was Amber Medeiros, who was 23, who was Lisa's daughter. And then Lisa Medeiros, 47 years old, of course, JT's girlfriend, that you heard being shot on the phone. And the fourth person that JT shot was Lily Medeiros, a 15-month-old daughter to Amber and granddaughter to Lisa. After he was done shooting them and his rampage was over, he then turned the gun on himself and committed suicide. But the one person that he didn't account for was Brittany, Lisa's other daughter, who was hiding in the bathroom when the shots started ringing out. And when everything went quiet, she came out and found her family members and proceeded to call 911.
Oh my God!
911, where's your emergency?
530 West Tumbleweed Road, Gilbert, Arizona 85233.
530 West Tumbleweed in Gilbert. What's going on there?
There was gunshots, and my mom and my niece and my sister are all on the floor, and I think they're dead.
You said gunshots, and
my mom.
Okay, tell me, what about your mom?
It was my mom's boyfriend, JT Ready. They were fighting, they were screaming. I was in my room, and now they're all dead.
Okay, where did you hear the gunshot?
I heard it coming from outside. The front door is open. They're all lying on the floor. There's blood.
This phone call was placed about 10 minutes after Lisa's initial phone call to the police department ended abruptly. They had already sent officers to the scene on Tumbleweed Road in Gilbert, Arizona. Gilbert is a suburb of Phoenix. The police were on their way, but they barely had an idea of what they were about to walk into.
Okay, who has been shot? Do you know?
My mom, Lisa Medeiros. My sister, Amber Medeiros.
Your mom's been shot?
My mom, my sister, and my niece. Please
Your mom,
hurry.
your sister, and your niece have all been shot?
Yes.
Okay, we've got officers on the way.
Okay, thank you.
Where is he at?
I don't know. I think he's gone. The front door's open. I just heard gunshots. I was in my room, and I come out, and they're all on the floor, and there's blood.
Okay, do you know where he's at or where the gun is?
I don't think he has lots of guns in the garage. They were fighting. There was really loud fighting.
Do you think he's in the garage? Do you think he's in the garage?
I don't know where he is. I think he left. I don't know. I'm
Okay, do you know if he has a vehicle?
Yes, he has a black car.
A black car?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
nice.
what kind of car is it?
I don't know what kind of car it is.
Is it a 2-door or a 4-door?
It's a 4-door.
It's a 4-door?
It's a small
Do you know what-
vehicle.
Okay, it's a passenger car, and do you know, okay, do you know, anything else about it? Do you know a license plate or if it's registered to him?
It's registered to him. That's all I know.
And is your boyfriend, what is his name?
It's not my boyfriend. It's my mom's boyfriend.
Oh, it's the mom's boyfriend? Okay, what is his name?
JT Ready. Jason Ready. Jason Ready.
Jason Ready, and this is 530 West Tumbleweed, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Do you happen to know, ma'am, do you happen to know what his, how old he is?
I think he's, like 30-something. I don't know.
30-something? Okay, and, how about, do you know where he lives?
He lives with my mom here. He's been staying here. He hasn't...
Okay. Okay. Do you know, have you heard anything else? Where are you at in the house?
I'm in my room.
Okay, where is that?
It's, there's the front door. You turn right, there's a hallway, and then I'm in my room.
Okay, a hallway, go right, and then you're in the room?
Yeah, there's the front door, your hallway, go right, you go straight in the room right there.
Okay. Could I have your name?
Brittany.
Brittany, what's your last name?
Medeiros.
This man who had terrorized her family for the better part of a year had forced her to move out. They had a family get-together. That's why Brittany and Amber and Lily were at Lisa's house that day. But of course, this man so filled with anger and hatred, with an arsenal of weapons, decided that he's probably killed before. And after Lisa saying that he destroyed her garage door, he finally had enough and decided to not just tear this family apart by kicking the two daughters out, but to murder 3 generations of the Madero family in cold blood, then take his own life. Why? That's the scariest question that you can ask, is why would somebody do this? What compels somebody to pull a trigger on an entire family? Not to mention a child who had their whole life in front of them, who barely knew this man. And now they're all gone. And the only person there to experience this entire tragedy is the 18-year-old daughter, Brittany Medeiros. You can't comprehend something like this. And you can't comprehend the type of anger and hatred that somebody like JT Ready, a white nationalist, a racist, a xenophobic, homophobic, honestly, the scummy underbelly, bottom of the barrel American that just hates people because they're not like him or they have a different race or nationality. There's no justification to it, and I don't understand why neo-Nazis, Klansmen, white supremacists, white nationalists are only deemed a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center instead of a federal database. Because Antifa can be classified as a hate group, even though there's not a grand wizard of Antifa. There's no head of Black Lives Matter, but they are seen as hate groups to some. But when it comes to a federal database, Klansmen aren't on there. Neither are white nationalists, and we had a fucking world war about this. But I digress. The police showed up on scene, tried their best to comfort Brittany. And I will say that 911 operator was compassionate as much as she could be while still trying to get information to relay to the responding officers. But what's running through the dispatcher's mind at that point in time is it has to be something so haunting that it keeps that person up at night.
Okay, what does Jason do for a living?
He goes to the border with his friends. They're not
What
part
does
of
he do for a living, though? What is?
He doesn't work. He goes to the sites. He goes to the border and with their guns, they go and try to find Mexicans with narcotics.
So, okay, so does he have an undercover job of some sort?
No, he doesn't work at all. He just sits at my house.
Okay.
And he was trying to go for sheriff or something, and I don't know if that went anywhere, but...
Okay. Do you know, okay, let's, if you're, I'm hoping that you can help me a little bit, Brittany. You're doing a great job. Can we talk about Jason just a little bit more as far as, do you know if he has a stash of weapons in the house at all?
Yes, in the garage.
Okay.
And I think there's a gun in my mom's room. It's really small.
Brittany?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about Jason a little bit more. I have to ask you all these questions, but you're helping us, okay? Because we're trying to help everybody as much as we can. Okay. So, can you think back about when you saw Jason today, what he may have been wearing?
I didn't see him at all this morning.
You haven't seen him at all? Okay.
No, the last time I saw him was last night before I went to bed.
It's pretty customary for a dispatcher to ask if there are weapons in the house, because of the safety of the officers. At this time, Brittany had not seen JT had actually committed suicide, but then again, she had also not seen her sister's fiance's body lying on the ground as well. But the dispatcher, with the information that Brittany had given her, had a little bit of an idea of who JT Ready was, considering that he didn't work, but he would always go down to the border and try to find drug operations and Mexicans. That's very notable to anybody who works in law enforcement. And he did have a name for himself, even in the Maricopa County area.
Okay, Brittany, if you can stay with me, okay? If you can stay with me, I've got officers at your house, but I don't want you to go anywhere, okay? I want you to stay right where you are until they're coming into your house. Brittany, are you listening to me?
Yes.
Brittany, okay, listen to me. Officers are coming into your house. Do not do anything unless I tell you, okay?
Okay.
Do not do anything, okay?
No, they're coming in my room.
Okay.
No.
How them? I mean, are they?
I don't know if JC's here or not.
Are you talking to officers?
Yeah.
Brittany, they're all with you?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go and hang up with you then, okay? If they're good with me hanging up with you.
I don't. It'd only be JT that was okay.
Are they wanting you to hang up the phone?
No, not yet. They're getting me. Come on, ma'am. Come on.
Yeah, we got that request.
We got you.
Are you with an officer so I
I'm
can
with an
talk to the
officer.
officer?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want me to disconnect with you or stay on the phone with you?
I don't want to talk anymore.
Okay, I will let you talk to the officer if the officer's okay with that. Do you want to hand the officer the phone first?
Okay.
Hold on, sweetheart. Go ahead and have a talk. Who is it?
This is radio. This is
It's
Nancy.
Samuel. It's Samuel.
Okay.
Hello. 1426.
Okay. Okay, and I'll let you.
I'm gonna hang up this line, okay?
Okay, thank you. Bye.
All right, bye.
After the police arrived, they took in Brittany and they got a statement from her. Anything that she knew, anything that they could have told, what led up to this domestic situation that turned deadly. Investigators examining the scene had found, quote, chemicals and military-grade munitions, and there was no other indication that anyone other than Ready was involved in the killings. In an article published by the Arizona Republic, it said that, quote, search warrant affidavits obtained by the Republic show federal agents seized numerous computers and munitions from the Gilbert home, where Ready lived and died in apparent murder-suicide. The warrants imply that weapons seized at the murder scene were stolen from the U.S. military. Focus on those weapons could trigger a larger federal investigation. The murders gave the FBI access to Ready's documents and computers inside the home where he lived with Lisa Medeiros. Documents connected to the search warrant show that FBI agents seized 2 computer towers and 2 laptop computers, correspondence, cell phones, police and Nazi uniforms, white supremacist propaganda, and bank statements. Agents seized 2 assault-style rifles and multiple rounds of ammunition. The reporting FBI agent focused on, quote, approximately 24 ordnance 40mm style hand grenades loaded with explosives, tear gas, buckshot, and smoke. This man had an arsenal. And those 40mm grenades are also not obtainable by standard citizens of the United States. I don't know how he got them, but he was well connected, and he knew that he was going to do some damage. After the news had come out about the mass shooting, the investigation went further, and unfortunately, there were a lot of people who weren't surprised by the attack. JT's militia wasn't the only rogue faction that would patrol the border, but other patrollers had tried their best to put as much distance as possible between them and JT's group. This also led to the closure of the FBI investigation for the murdered immigrants along the border, and, unsurprisingly, after his murder spree, less murders were happening along the border and less bodies were being found by the feds. But no justice would be served for those innocent lives that JT had gunned down in cold blood. Now, for the White Nationalist Movement, they had also tried to put as much distance between themselves and JT as possible. Of course, we all know who those kinds of people are, but whether they approved or condemned JT for his actions, it's a different mindset to have so much aggression and hate fill your entire body and mindset that you carry out something like he did. The police had concluded after their investigation that this was indeed a domestic situation that had turned violent, but still, no justification. The neighbors of Lisa Medeiros had recounted many times when they had described JT's violent actions and verbal altercations with Lisa and her daughters. Some had spoken with news crews about what it was like living next to Lisa both before and after JT had moved in. They always remember Lisa being very outgoing and willing to do anything for their neighbors, sometimes bringing over dishes that she had made or had even offered to watch their kids or family members if they needed it. But after JT moved in, they started seeing less and less of Lisa. One neighbor had even made an attempt to try to get along with JT, but described his attitude as arrogant and bullish, and would keep Lisa on a very close leash and was incredibly controlling. Now, as for her daughter Brittany, I can't find much about her on the internet, but I do hope that she's doing the best that she can, that maybe she's okay, because, I can't fathom what it's like to try to live after somebody had done such a senseless and horrible act that destroys your entire family. Now, usually with my cases, I have some sort of a follow-up that I like saying at the end of the show and wrapping everything up into a nice, neat little package, such as the perpetrator going on trial, their convictions, and even if they're still in prison and what they're up to now. But with this one, I don't. JT Ready is dead. He killed 3 generations of the Medeiros family, Amber's fiancé, and then himself, like a coward. And that's the end of his abysmal life and story, and the remaining members of the Medeiros family will never have justice for what this man had done to them one afternoon in May of 2012. But reflecting on this, the words and actions of hate, what good does it really do for anyone, really? Differing opinions on politics can drive a stake between people, and racist rhetoric and feelings can do just the same, if not worse. But what good does harboring hate really do for anyone? Like I said at the beginning of this episode, you can always change your opinion when faced with new information. Growth is always encouraged, because when we stop growing, we stop learning. And when we stop listening to others, we become stagnant, and we almost lose our humanity. And this reminds me of a photo that I saw when the Black Lives Matter protest really started taking place after the murder of George Floyd. This photo is taken in Ocala, Florida, and it's a picture of a black woman taking a cell phone photo of a white man with a goatee and shaggy brown hair. This man is named Dylan Gentry. And Dylan is shirtless in this photo, with many tattoos on his chest and body. And in the photo, he looks angry, brooding, as he also has a swastika tattooed on the right side of his chest, an iron cross tattooed on his throat, an NSM for the National Socialist Movement, and other pieces that would honestly throw up a red flag for anybody that knows what neo-Nazi tattoos look like. And when this picture was posted, the outrage behind the photo was fast and swift. Practically anyone who saw the photo immediately commented on the size of his breasts or pointed out that, he was a Nazi. But the thing about Dylan is that wasn't the case. Quote, "All a Nazi has to see is change. Not just a change of heart, but a change of the times we're in. I'd rather be a man that shows a difference and maybe be able to help y'all gain more support," end quote. And that was written on a Facebook post. Dylan Gentry has grown, because most people only saw that one photo, but what they didn't see was the poster that he held up that said, "Black Lives Matter." Dylan is an actively reforming white supremacist, and while I hope that someone offers to cover up those shitty tattoos on his body, his words from the heart have shown that he was presented with new information, and that he knew that even though he had these symbols of hate emblazoned on his skin, that he could learn to let go of his prior mindset and embrace the ideology of love and peace rather than that of narrow-mindedness and hate. Sure, Dylan isn't perfect. Dylan used to be filled with more hate than most of us can harbor. But Dylan is trying to be a better person. And I think in society, there's always room for people that are willing to change, grow, and learn. Even if they made mistakes in the past, it doesn't mean that you can't change for a better future. So, good on that, man. But that's going to do it for this episode. I thank you for being here with me. I thank you for listening to this one. And yes, I had a lot of audio from the 911 calls and other sources for this one. But if you enjoyed the show and you would like to help out with the back end, please feel free to check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/murderandsuch, or it's also available on murderandsuch.com. And the only tier I have is $1 per episode, and sometimes 1 to 2 episodes a month. You get an exclusive RSS feed for the show that's ad-free, you get exclusive stickers that nobody else can get, and you also help my fat belly become a little bit fatter. But if you'd like to follow the show, you can find it on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Murder and Such. And if you'd like to follow me personally, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, the PlayStation Network, Snapchat, and Steam at Huntor27. I also did put on Instagram that I made another Instagram that is at Poor Peppa Pig, in which every day I add a very badly photoshopped picture of Peppa Pig in different movies or other things. So yeah, that's a little hobby of mine. But I thank you again for listening to the show, and if you can, drop me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, or maybe just tell a friend about the show. But until next time, wash your hands, wear your mask, call a friend today. But I love you, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.